Whether you need to restock the fridge or just have a sudden, intense craving for cheese puffs, Kroger Delivery will get you just what you need in as little as 30 minutes. From groceries to household items, Kroger delivers right to your door. So don't let one major craving have you reaching for your car keys. Open the Kroger app and start your cart, whatever the cart. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Delivery times not guaranteed. Restrictions may apply. See site for details.
Welcome to Meet the Press Slam episode. I think I lost count of episodes a long time ago here. I have a very special guest with me here. We've been threatening to do audio with each other for a long ass time. I've met this dude in person. He's a great guy. From the Military Industrial Suplex podcast, he is Tom Batista. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Danny. Thank you. I appreciate the introduction and the kind words. So
yeah, it really is an honor doing audio with you finally after years of threatening.
this has definitely been a long time coming. There have been situations in your life and my life and work schedules. Obviously, we've stayed in contact over the years, and now we're actually doing it. So this is it. Here it is.
Here it is. And how did you get into wrestling before we get into all the serious Vince McMahon?
Oh, God. Yeah, so let's start at light and then move into, I don't know, I guess this is kind of like having dessert first and then having your meal. But yeah, I got into wrestling. Wrestling has just always been a part of my life. I wish I could, have this romantic story of, oh God, I remember I was, just going to 7-Eleven to get a Slurpee and then I ran into, whatever. But the thing is that it's just always been in the house. It was never, my dad didn't watch it. My mom didn't watch it. They knew I watched it. I don't know how. I think, it was extended family. But for me, wrestling was always this interesting thing of, these are grown men pretending to fight for a living. And they're doing it in such a theatrical way. People go to movies every year just to see the fight scenes. People go to action movies just to see that. They go to see the explosions. You look at John Wick 4, which is coming out soon, and, people love the stunts, and that's what pro wrestling is to me. It is that it's the best parts of the Michael Bay movie. It's the best parts of the, John Wick franchise. It's just action. It's adventure. It's really, for me, as just such a young age, and I guess it's, the same thing with religion, where it can get you and in any point in your life, but it's really when you're the most vulnerable and the most imaginative. When you're a kid, you don't know the world. The world can be anything that you want it to be. And so you get to decide, and, you get to do the same thing as an adult, but maybe not to the level of hardcore belief. But yeah, when I was, 8 years old, 10 years old, or whatever, watching wrestling, that was real. That, those guys were really in there doing it. I knew, it's kind of, it's a little, there's something going on, obviously. But I really appreciated the art and the performance and the theatrics and the larger than life, real life superheroes. People, and we're going to segue into this very shortly, is that people like to sit there and criticize Vince and WWE when they say that they're the Marvel of pro wrestling. They're the Disney of pro. They are. I don't care how anyone feels about that statement. Vince McMahon created something to a level that it just never existed and that it wasn't. And all reality, it wasn't even meant to be. And yeah, no, it's just, I'm ranting too long, but the answer to your question is a very long time.
Yeah, it's been a long time for me, about 20 some odd years, for me, since like 2005. So it's been about 17 years. So I don't have this romanticized story either.
Well,
but
I guess for me, because you and I have never talked about this. I've known you for a number of years, and we never discussed that. 2005, what got you into pro wrestling? Because I was watching wrestling way before 2005.
I think it was the wacky nature of it all.
No. Let's step back. So not as a general concept, but I'm saying 2005, Danny has not watched any pro wrestling ever. He's now watching pro wrestling. What is the promotion? What is the angle?
WWE.
Okay, so it's WWE. Who's the wrestlers? What hooked you?
JBL as a heel. I wanted to hate his guts as much as possible. And it was initially that John Cena run.
On SmackDown?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was good. Mm-hmm.
Which really is interesting because of the fandom I grew to hate John Cena, but I always had this soft spot for John Cena.
Yeah. I mean, I feel the same way, where I always had John Cena, and I think that when I think of WWE over the last 20 odd years, I think of Cena, Triple H, Roman Reigns. These were the guys that were put at the top of the card that got so much shit. And it wasn't because of them or their performance in the ring. It was the politics and bullshit and nonsense that surrounded them. Where you have Triple H's reign of terror. You have John Cena killing off every single credible heel that would ever exist in the world. Even returning one night to challenge Rey Mysterio Jr. on Raw after Rey just competed in a match. It was like the ultimate, and then just the Roman Reigns booking. It's so hard. I've never talked about this, or I never said this before, so I don't have the words and the beautiful, the ornate. Yeah, I can't do it right now, but I don't have the rant. But ultimately, it's very interesting that WWE's last 20 years were highlighted by people that the fans didn't like, or I don't want to say that they didn't like, but they rejected the booking and presentation of those fans or of those wrestlers in certain areas. And WWE never acknowledged that and scaled back. They just scaled up in some situations. The long promos from Triple H to start Raw in the early 2000s. I mean, fuck, man. John Cena, Roman Reigns looking like a geek.
I was in the building, Royal Rumble 2015. Yeah, I was in that building.
Yeah, and that was embarrassing. It is literally a promotion that says, oh, hey, the most over guy in this company is Bryan Danielson. Fuck him. Let's make sure that Roman Reigns gets his stuff in. Rey Mysterio comes out and he's booed. Rey Mysterio, WWE managed to get the biggest babyface in the world for the last 20 years a guy who has tried to get booed and wasn't really getting booed.
Booed.
They got that man booed. It's unbelievable.
And the year after, the one I was at, they got Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson booed out of the building.
Yeah. I think that I want to say that was the same Royal Rumble, but again, you were there. So, wow. So Rey Mysterio,
Philadelphia. Wow. So the 2014 one where Roman eliminated 13 people, and Batista won.
Okay, but so 2016 is where you were.
2015 right? Was the one Roman won, and Rock came out, and they still eliminated Bryan Danielson early.
Correct, but that's the same one where Rey Mysterio was number 30 because they eliminated Bryan.
The 2014 one was where Rey Mysterio was 30. Everyone booed that shit.
Yeah,
and because that's the same night that Bryan Danielson and Bray had their match.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with I don't want to say I'm too familiar, but the WWE canon of the last 20 years or so is
it's kind of wonky because
it's wonky. Not only in its presentation, but in my mind. So yeah,
because they were both in Pennsylvania. They were
so that's
in Philadelphia.
Gotcha. So that's what's tripping me up because I know they were both. Because when you were saying that, I was like, wait a minute, wasn't that in wasn't that the okay? So okay, I got you. Yep.
All was the 2014 one in Pittsburgh. The 2015 one was Bryan Danielson coming in at like 17, getting eliminated around 4.
Yeah.
Roman Reigns coming out, eliminating everybody again, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson coming out to save him and getting it booed out of the building.
Correct. Okay.
And getting booed relentlessly, and those two Rumbles are hilarious to watch back.
It's just, I don't know. Like I said, I do remember watching it a few months ago, watching it back, like you mentioned, and I'm just sitting there just saying, what the fuck is it? Like, AEW is great because AEW doesn't hate its fans. Tony Khan doesn't hate its fans. WWE for 20 years, and it's insane for over 20 years. And it's insane to hear that the WWE talking points has infiltrated into the fan base where people are regurgitating the WWE talking points without any thought, without any discussion. Yeah, without any issue, without any critical thinking applied to it. It is literally, hey, well, the fans are stupid. WWE got to a point, and I haven't seen this in any other fandom, but WWE got to a point where people believe that the biggest problem with the product
was with the company.
No, was with the fans. The fans were the problem. Because if the fans would just stop overthinking and stop, hey, it's just wrestling and all this other bullshit, WWE made the fans the biggest villain in all of this. And so you have the kayfabe Lacey Evans walking out, hey, all of you are nasty and this is what I think and I'm bad because of you. And then you have real situations where Zack Ryder doesn't get the push and Daniel Bryan doesn't get the push, or Booker T in early 2002, one of the most over guys on the roster. He doesn't get the world title when he's the most over Braun Strowman doesn't get the world till he gets it, after the fact when things have cooled down. And it was just, it's amazing.
It honestly is amazing to me because they made the fans their enemy. And then it took a seismic shift of AEW being back, AEW coming in, and then all those fans left for AEW, and now they have a totally cooperative fan base.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and that's one of the things about, being the only game in town. You're the only game in town. People come to you. My fandom of WWE, this is where my fandom is right now. I don't watch Raw. I don't watch SmackDown. I'll watch NXT if I have time and I just so happen to be home. I'll watch the pay-per-views because, they're pay-per-views and something's going to happen. But I'm not invested in any of the performers. Like, there is no one right now that you can tell me they won the world title and I would care. There's no one on that roster that I would care. I might say, oh, well, that's interesting. Or, oh, hey, that's cool. But an emotional investment where Cody Rhodes joined WWE. Do you know how many Cody Rhodes WWE matches I saw? I saw that WrestleMania exactly one. I didn't start watching Raw because he was there. I didn't start watching SmackDown or the pay-per-view or anything because he was there. My fandom of WWE just hasn't changed because the product hasn't changed. And it's not to say that it needs that Tony Khan, because again, that's just one man's view of pro wrestling. And I think that Vince, has had a lot of good stuff, a lot of great things. But at the end of the day, as it stands in 2022, the WWE product to me is interesting to watch more so for a historical purpose than anything else. And like I said, I'm not one of these wrestling fans that like to get online and say that, oh, hey, this is the last Raw I'm watching, and then I watch Raw the next week. I don't know. It's just not interesting to me.
No, I'm like you where I just stopped. I just flat out stopped watching SmackDown and Raw and even NXT to a point where I'm like, I'm not even interested in their product on a week in, week out basis. And where most of the time I forget that there's a pay-per-view on.
Oh yeah. No, that's happened to me a number of times where, and even the timeline, like it's just one of those things where when I sign in on my social media, I see I have, 600 followers or something. Not a lot, but I have 600 followers and people I'm following. And I don't see the activity for Raw and SmackDown that I see for Dynamite or even Rampage or a AEW pay-per-view versus a WWE pay-per-view. Granted, that is a small sample size because it's only 600 people or so. But at the same time, it's just very interesting to see play out where the corporation, the federation, WWE, I feel only really has a fan base that was either indoctrinated in and just won't leave for whatever reason that may be, or it's just fans that have accepted the WWE propaganda and history of the last 20 years.
And it's sad because they can't be sort of transformed into wrestling fans. It's more they can be transformed into I don't know what the term would be.
Sports entertainment enthusiasts.
The WWE universe.
Yeah, the WWE universe filled of sports entertainment enthusiasts, ready to have a good time and smile.
And it's like I don't believe. I believe you can be a fan of both products, but it's getting harder to justify being a fan of WWE if you know the morally reprehensible practices of WWE.
Well, the thing is that WWE has always had this. This isn't new. Again, we're going to get into it in a second, but this Vince stuff isn't new. We already knew who this guy was. We already knew the company that he was. How many people in the early to mid 2000s left WWE or was fired?
Muted for a second there. I'm a little bit of a technical difficulty, but I agree with how many people have removed themselves from the WWE in terms of the actual allocation of the view of sexual misconduct or stuff like that. But are you back? You're muted according to me right now.
Okay, you should hear me. I apologize. So mainly what we're talking about here for me is that this has been long understood and known about Vince McMahon and about WWE. When you start talking about the early 2000s, mid 2000s of WWE, you start talking about guys like Rene Dupree, Chris Nowinski, Paul London, Charlie Haas. You talk about Ashley. These are not people that have good conversations to have about WWE and their time about WWE. They talk about the hazing. They talk about the bullshit. And unfortunately, Ashley is not here to talk about that right now.
That's correct.
What happened to that woman is just absolutely disgusting and unfortunate. And I hope that she gets justice. And that's what I'll say about that.
It's reprehensible.
Absolutely. It's unbelievable. That's why I say, Vince is not a victim here. If somebody wants to, sit down and say, hey, you know what? Vince was part of my fandom, or, I'm a big fan of Defy, but, WWE got whatever you want to say, that's fine. But in order for wrestling to change, not just WWE, but for wrestling, at the end of the day, people have to sit there and say, hey, you know what? This person has a lot of ideas. They've drawn money in the past, but they're a bad person. They're a fucking asshole, and we got to get them out. Pro wrestling for a very long time has not regulated itself against sexual predators like Joey Ryan. They haven't regulated themselves, or they've bowed down and kissed ass because of power and money. Or someone like Vince McMahon, they've turned a blind eye to John Laurinaitis and his actions. And then you even think about the Ric Flair stuff that's come out. WWE literally made an animated short of Ric Flair sexually harassing people. And they had Miz and Dolph Ziggler. Oh, hey, it's just a funny story. Ha, 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 ha. And I sat there, even at that time, this isn't Monday morning quarterbacking This isn't me coming in with a hot moral take or any of that bullshit. At the time, I said, why are people laughing at a guy just showing his dick to some random woman? I said, if I did that, would everyone find it hilarious
No.
and just me being me, or will I go to jail that night? The fact of the matter is that at the end of the day, I think that what's happened over the last 20 years is that people within wrestling realize that wrestling isn't just wrestling, and that, oh, it's just wrestling is no longer excuse. Oh, it's just wrestling is no longer excuse for a bad product. Oh, it's just wrestling is not an excuse for not following storylines, character motives, etc. Oh, it's just wrestling doesn't mean that hazing is accepted. It doesn't mean harassment is accepted. Oh, it's just wrestling. That doesn't mean that rape cover-ups are accepted. It doesn't mean that NDAs are accepted. It doesn't mean that crossing talent, male or female, or fucking even children. That's not wrestling, man.
No.
That has nothing to fucking do with wrestling.
I put a black eye on it.
It did for a very long time, you know. And I don't want to say that the most egregious thing in all of this, but something that lets you know how comfortable these people were. You had Vince's Devils. This guy is making out with it. This guy is the owner of the company, booking himself to make out with Tori Wilson,
Trish
Stratus, the whole 9 yards. This is the owner of the company. And yeah, you could say, oh, well, it was just the Mr. McMahon character, and that's how you write characters and things like that. And that's all well and good, except for then you hear all this behind the scenes, and you're like, you gotta be kidding me. Paul London has this just depressing story of Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn and everything. Hey, Ashley, you got to ride the corporate jet. It's like, I don't know.
It just sucks. It just sucks. And people are not going to be held responsible. Vince McMahon's going to walk away with tons of money anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, at the end of the day, the thing is when CEOs get fired or they have to leave or resign. Okay. At the end of the day, I guess what I'm just trying to say is that, pro wrestling doesn't have to be a dirty word. I've said that multiple times. Pro wrestling doesn't have to be this bad thing. Now that Vince is gone and you have AEW and you have the resurrection of Ring of Honor, and you have the male wrestlers put out to pasture, all the wrestlers that during the pandemic era and during see, that's the thing that a lot of people don't want to discuss or even talk about, because everyone's trying to get clout, trying to get that next interview, trying to move up in the business. When WWE was signing everyone, that really left the promotions outside WWE to struggle.
Right.
And you saw their fan bases struggle because there were no stars there. Everybody decided to laugh and play around and, hey, how can my next spot be funny and hilarious?
And meme wrestling.
Yeah,
and all that
meme. Yeah, and hey, everything's ironic, guys, and we're not taking this serious because we all know it's fake. Ha, 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 ha. all those wrestlers, surprisingly, right now, or not even surprisingly, but surprisingly to them, they're not working now.
No.
They're not getting the amount of bookings they were. All of a sudden, the joke's over. Alley Cat thought everything was funny and a joke. Didn't take anything she did seriously. It was a joke and everything was fun until nobody showed up to her vanity show. And when nobody showed up to her vanity show, all of a sudden, she started wearing all black and she was Alley Catch. And she kept saying, oh, well, the catch isn't about wrestling. It's just, it's like, oh, I'm not a serious pro wrestler. I don't try, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, so what does the catch in your name stand for? What does it mean?
And she's not that good of a pro wrestler anyway. But
she's not. She's, and I was thinking about this earlier today. I was thinking about, man, we've come a long way as a fandom. Where back in the day, I used to be criticized and heralded as a sexist and misogynist, all because I didn't enjoy a Trish Stratus and Candice Michelle match. Imagine that. Imagine not enjoying any of the subpar efforts of diva wrestling. Oh, I love Awesome Kong and Gail Kim. Taylor Wilde and Roxy, pump that shit into my veins. Oh, I see Mischief and Cheerleader Melissa doing their thing over in Shimmer. I love it.
Right.
I see the Gaia. I see the Arsa. Hey, I love it. But the moment I see some WWE, Lita versus Christy Hemme, and I don't want to see it, and I think it's garbage, all of a sudden I'm a sexist. But the people calling me sexist don't have that Lita versus Christy Hemme match in their top 10 match of the year. They don't have Lita as Wrestler of the Year. They don't have Christy Hemme as Wrestler of the Year.
Right.
The only thing they want to do is get off their talking points because they have something loaded in the chamber and they're waiting for anybody to even walk past their house just so they can shoot them and say, hey, you know what? I got him. It's just
like a big high five game. It's like a big high five game.
It is. It really is. Like, it's, to me, it's just so amazing how the internet can, take you out of context, and then some people purposely do it, and then they run with it. And at no point in time do they ever want to have a dialogue, or do they actually really want to find, like, hey, can you just tell me what you really believe? Everyone's looking for the talking points and the gotchas and the, oh, he said this, guys. I got this. Yeah, it's gotcha. That's all it is. And, a lot of women's discussion for the last 20 years was gotcha, or hey, you're a sexist,
stopwatch,
or hey, stopwatch, or hey, you're a misogynist. It was just like, wait a minute. So we
can't evaluate these on fair levels?
Absolutely not. People say that it's sexist to grade women's wrestling on a curve, but these same people that say that are the same people that say, oh, hey, you can't criticize. It's like, hey, man, if we're not being sexist, then I should be able to say the exact same things that I say about men, that I say about male athletes, to women athletes. I mean, if we're going to be inclusive, and this is the thing that Triple H said a while ago on his, I don't want to say podcast because it wasn't a podcast, but it was a meeting scrum or what a conference call, whatever it was. He said, guys, I thought the entire goal was to be inclusive. And that's what my philosophy on women's wrestling for the last 20 years boils down to.
Yeah.
I thought you guys want to be inclusive.
They don't
because
really want to be inclusive. They just want to have their hot take machine out
yeah,
and ready to.
no, exactly. And being inclusive, like I said, it really means that all right, well, if men and women are equal, well then hey, we're going to
Joshi Wrestling's the best wrestling of all, one of the best wrestling periods of all time, and nothing else compares to it. And this other women's wrestling side is go. That's
no, you're like I said, man. It's interesting. It's unfortunate that in some aspects we can't even have a
healthy
healthy, a reasonable
dialogue.
Exactly, yeah. A dialogue about women's wrestling even today, because like I said, Liv Morgan is like, listen, man, Liv Morgan is not over.
And she stinks.
Gio Daddio, she's over. People like Gio, they do not like
Liv
Morgan. Exactly. And that's a huge problem with WWE right now, where I like Naomi, but I also like Trinity Fatu.
Right.
A lot of people like Sasha Banks, but they also like Mercedes Varnado.
Right.
Or Varnado. Yeah, Varnado. Varnado. Okay. People like her. And a lot of it's come down to, for wrestling, for me, when I take a look at mainstream wrestling, and this is not just WWE, again, mainstream wrestling. So AEW, Ring of Honor is now the third promotion. You see it in Impact as well, where people feel as though they deserve to be applauded and respected and heralded as just for showing up. I cannot remember a time in the 90s where someone came on TV and said, hey, this heel and this babyface just had a great match. Let's go ahead and applaud their efforts. And that became very, and other promotions have done that, but post 2001, WWE was constantly doing this, to the point where just a few weeks ago or months ago, Becky Lynch essentially came out and said, hey, the women last night at Money in the Bank or Hell in a Cell or whatever the pay-per-view was, they put their bodies on line, and you guys didn't appreciate it. You were throwing beach balls. And it's like, why would a wrestler in a show say that? That doesn't make any sense. No, because the thing that always perplexed me about WWE and pro wrestling is just that it's all fake.
Yes.
You can move the audience, or not only the audience, but your product any way you want to, whenever you want to.
Right.
If you don't want to have someone look, hey, these women are getting booed and blah, 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 don't book that match. Don't put these.
It was Shotzi in the Money in the Bank that she had that no tap thing.
Well, regardless of what it was, because I'm not sure it was, it just essentially comes down to, do not put people in a situation where they're not going to succeed. But then if you do, and they do not succeed, do not talk about it afterwards and blame everyone else.
Right.
Hey, I went. Can you imagine this in any other situation?
Sport?
Well, sport or situation in life. Imagine I show up to the ice cream shop and you're a customer, and I give you a scoop of vanilla and shit. That is the ice cream I'm serving you. You take a bite and you say, hey, man, this is nonsense. This tastes like shit. This is terrible. I refuse to pay. And my response to you isn't, oh, huh, I guess I need to make sure never sell Danny vanilla and shit again. Make sure to just sell him vanilla ice cream, and he might be fine, and he might come back and keep making money. But I decide, no. Danny's wrong.
It's your fault.
It's you're the problem. It's this big gaslighting,
I think pro wrestling is
history
gaslighting.
Is unbelievable.
I think pro wrestling is a huge gaslighting industry.
Yeah. No, like I said, when I think of gaslight, I think of mainly more so just in this aspect, just blaming the fans.
Yeah.
And just blaming the fans of, hey, you guys are throwing around beach balls. That's disrespectful. You know who's never had that problem? Stardom's never had that problem. AEW's never had that problem. People have never had that problem.
Right.
Except for one company. And then I remember when fans were coming back, people were sitting there saying, oh, man, I don't want fans, blah, 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 blah. And that the only people saying this were WWE fans. AEW fans wanted the fans back. New Japan fans couldn't wait to. Everyone was excited except for WWE fans. And that lets you know what the product is. And now you don't have to worry about AEW or rather WWE pay-per-views being hijacked and this and that for the simple fact that, guess what? All those people watch AEW now. They don't watch WWE. WWE pay-per-views will never be hijacked because the only people left are people that actually enjoy what they're seeing.
I can't believe it devolved into that, but okay. I think we had a good conversation here for about an hour, so plugs.
Plugs. I don't have any plugs. No plugs. All I want to say is, as far as plugs, drink water, check your mental health, man. It's very important. Yeah. You don't have to work out every day, but, definitely try and go outside and get some sun if you can.
Yep. Amen.
I understand that everyone's not, physically able to run around or even walk, but, try and get some sun, drink some water, keep narcissistic people out of your life. And just try and love, man. Try and love and enjoy pro wrestling. Because that's kind of where I am in my life. So,
amen.
That's what I want to plug.
DJ D Kooks on Twitter. D Kook31096 on Instagram. That's where I'm at. So thank you all for listening to Meet the Press Slam with Tom Batista and myself.
And what network are you on right now? Just to make sure.
The Social Suplex Podcast Network.
Oh no, not those guys.
Yes, those guys.
Not those characters.
Rich Latta, Boy, Jeremy Donovan.
Network. Rich Latta, God bless Jeremy, James. Thank you guys. And
thank you.
Thank you, Danny, of course.
O'Reilly. Stay cool this summer with AC Pro and O'Reilly Auto Parts. Right now, get a $15 O'Reilly Auto Parts gift card after mail-in rebate with the purchase of select AC Pro ready-to-use refrigerant products that include a hose and gauge. Beat the heat before you hit the road with AC Pro at your local O'Reilly Auto Parts store. O'Reilly Auto